This is episode 84 of our Road to Unicum, and today we look at the EBR Hotchkiss. This is the new Tier 7 French wheeled light tank in World of Tanks, and we're going to take a look at a pair of battles. First up is this Tier 9 Westfield, and then we are going to look at a Tier 8 Tundra battle. So the EBR Hotchkiss has a couple significant upgrades when you move up a tier from the Tier 6 AMD 178B, which was the Tier 6 tank that I reviewed in the last video. The gun on this tank packs significantly more punch, so the alpha moves up from around 110 all the way up to 170, which is a big increase, and then notably the penetration value also increases all the way up to 160, which is very functional for a Tier 7 light tank, especially given how mobile this is. The alpha on the HE round also moves up to 260, and so, that remains a very effective tool situationally. Notice I moved up and I parked behind this bush. The other option which I could have done is I could have tried to make a run further around those bushes, do a loop, and come back. Now, I'm not doing that primarily for a couple of reasons. One, two of our light tanks already pushed up pretty aggressively, both our Lynx as well as our AMX. And so, what I want to do is be here and provide some flanking fire, and also if they have any tanks that come up around the G6, G7 area, I want to get the first spot advantage on them because I'm sitting in the bush. I don't often go to K0 in a light tank. I'll do it in a brawly medium. I'll do it in a light tank if I am in a platoon or if I have reasonable confidence that other tanks will come with me, right? But like what just happened with our 1390, he just got run over, dogpiled. And so, I've learned going to K0 can be a very fast one-way ticket. The other thing too is once you get really close to enemy tanks at K0, things like camo and vision don't really matter as much because your opponents will be able to, spot you. And obviously I'm bottom tier. That's yet another reason that I didn't go over there. And again, I don't want to be redundant with the light tanks that we have. Notice I'm going to back up so that there's just a ton of bush cover between me and this 1375, and I've got high explosive loaded. I get a really nice roll for 302 damage. Now part of the problem is we've been pushed off of the zero line. Right, but we've actually got more pressing concerns. At the very beginning of the battle, I'd actually asked our arties if they would support our heavies in the northwest corner. I think it's a much more important thing for them to do. And what I'm going to do is try to work in some flanking fire and help delay this flank collapsing as long as possible and get some damage. So I did knock over a tree there. That's a bit of intentional gardening. I am having to move out from behind the bush to get a shot on that Conqueror. I didn't know if he would spot me, but either way, even if he had spotted me, I would slide back so that'd be behind the building. But you can tell our heavy tanks are getting hammered here. And so it's just a matter of time before this flank collapses. Now, you guys have heard me talk about, it's a really bad generalization. You'll hear people say, notice by the way, that Conqueror, there was a bush between me and him. He was on the side of the building. Sometimes a shot like that, you still won't get lit, even though in that case, I think we were too close. But, people have often said you should follow the lemming train, i.e. abandon the weaker side. I don't believe you should just give up terrain for free. Now, granted, you don't want to suicide and get run over, and that was, by the way, a dangerous shot. I didn't realize the T-29 was in between us. But you can't just let them take large swaths of land for nothing, right? So I did manage to work in some damage on that Panther. Obviously, in that Conqueror, Conqueror is their top-tier heavy tank, very dangerous. You can see he's already racked up 3 kills. And we have a huge 4-tank deficit. Now, the good thing is this Panther is over pursuing, right? And I've got a lot of help, those medium tanks that are behind me. Unfortunately, our M53, he totally misplays this. And I think players like this often just give up too early. And what he really should have done is stayed down along the zero lane. If he wanted to, for example, we're the Scorpion. Scorpion's not, the only thing he can see right now is me. The other tanks, our friendly tanks, are probably not lit, right? I'd switch over, actually I stay with the AP round. Sometimes, with the high explosive, you'll hit a tank. I did switch over just in case I was able to get a shot at him. But our other arty who's still alive, right? He was fine until they push down to past the 8 lane. They're not going to be able to spot that arty because there's trees and bushes and buildings in the way. And so our arty just panicked. I think he gave up. Granted, we were down 4 tanks, but what I know is that their tanks pursuing us have to cross that kill zone. That's part of the reason why I was up there, harassing that Panther. And what I'm doing now is I want to get wide on the A line of these other tanks, right? And so, yes, they have won city. The problem is that if I stay wide, I'm going to now put that AT-15 between me and our arty. So he's either going to get smacked in the back like he just did by our arty, or he's going to get shot by me. And so this is a really important thing to think about. You know, I've essentially, it's kind of like a chess move. We've surrounded that AT-15. He's a slow tank. Now, I have two options. I could either go down against that AT-15 and try to brawl with him. The thing that makes me nervous is we haven't seen their heavy tanks in a while, right? And I'm most likely going to spot them at or before the time when they spot me. If I go down and fight that AT-15, and you know, obviously that's going to keep me lit. See, I don't know where the IS is, right? He might have been close enough he can take a shot at me. So some people would say, yeah, you should go and, you know, circle that AT-15. You'll see me do it later, but I felt like it was a little too early. The other reason why I came up here was to see whether I might get spotted by, it's obviously there I was lit by the IS-7 is too close. But, you know, part of what I wanted to find out too is, did I get lit by their UDES? We haven't seen him, so we don't know exactly where he is, right? But the fact that I wasn't spotted by the UDES, only spotted by the IS after I fired, gives me a little bit of information. So the UDES is likely somewhere in the southwest corner of the map. He's not over by, for example, D1 or F1, D1, E1, or F1. Okay, so it would be helpful for me to either light the AT-15 or the IS, and then here in a moment, I'm going to get what I consider a little bit lucky. Obviously, he's going to spot me, but, you know, he snapshotted me with a Soviet heavy. They have really bad guns. Now, remember earlier, I didn't rush at the AT-15. Now I'm totally going after him because I know he's not going to have backup. Their Challenger was last spotted along the K lane, right? So I mentioned all this so that you understand, you know, kind of the thinking process. The wheeled vehicles are tremendously fast, and a lot of people just love circling targets. You'll see me do that in the next Tundra battle, but I try to do it carefully. You don't want to circle a tank that you're to shoot at it and kill it, while his friendly tank can provide supporting fire. Now, the bummer about my getting hit by that IS is that I'm now one-shottable, right? If the Charioteer high rolls or has high explosive, and certainly the alpha on that UDES gun is enough to kill me. So notice I'm coming here, I'm trying to see if I can spot the Charioteer crossing in the open along the K3, 4, 5 area. I'm not spotting him. What this likely means is that the Charioteer smartly ran off a while ago, and that he's going to be sitting behind a bush. And remember, with a really low view range, like I have around 390 meters of view range with this crew, and that's including, you know, optics, so your optics, vents, brothers in arms, situation awareness, and I think a little bit of recon, and food. So this is as good as it gets. Now notice I'm taking progressively wider loops to the west because I'm trying to figure out, get an approximation of where they might be located. Now, in a situation like this too, like it's important to note, like we can take our time. Earlier I was having to scramble like mad when, you know, we were down by 3 tanks, 4 tanks, and our, you know, heavies got wrecked northwest. Now I can take my time. So now you can see I'm taking a little bit of a wider loop, and I'm going to go ahead and drive a little bit unpredictably. And it's a good thing that I do this because in a moment here, I get lit, right? And so, you know, if that IS hadn't hit me earlier, I might have been willing to run down there and just try, you know, kind of the YOLO scouting thing. But as a one-shot tank, and with us with Artie, we should take our times and be surgical about this. And especially because the E4 had so much hit points left, and he's got a good frontal armor profile. There was a very good likelihood that, you know, the second one of them fired because he pushed straight west along the K lane. That was super helpful that he did that, and since he has a bully tank with lots of hit points, he should do that. And then notice here, like, I actually don't need to get any closer to the Sudas. I'm a little surprised he didn't spot me. It might be because he had moved a little bit before I fired, and then that broke, you know, his binoculars, which I generally recommend for most squishy TDs to run binoculars. Assault TDs like the T95 and T28, especially the T95, you know, I ran with optics, but I don't actually need to get any closer. Notice, you know, from this distance, this is totally a fine shot to make, right? And I think a lot of times people try to close the gap too much. What I try to do is put bushes between us to make sure I was safe. So there I racked up 3,600 damage, definitely a well above average game. For me in this tank, I average in the mid 1400s damage per game. And, you know, if I cracked 2K, that was considered a very good game, and a 3K or above is a superb game. And obviously, this is a tier 7 light tank, so you're not necessarily expecting to dish out a lot of damage. Now, I will often, on Tundra, call for help for the hill. It is the area that offers the best map control because you can basically cover north, south, and the middle areas of the map from up here. What can be tough is making this initial crossing here, especially if they had sent their wheeled light tanks here. I can get shot at. And obviously they have 3 Arties, so it's kind of 2 places you can play. You can play right where I am there at that pivot point, or you can move up a little bit further right on this shelf here. Now I need to be careful because, you know, their backline snipers, like their Scorpion, can shoot me. And there, you know, obviously I had the HE loaded, and I had plenty of time to aim in because I had the first shot advantage. He was not aware of me, but I am going to move back and forth just a little bit here and take some pot shots. Remember, I need to be careful because I will eventually, I will get lit if I'm not careful. Okay, the Panther is just below me. Now, here's a vision control trick. Now, it turns out I won't know this until I fire, right? When I fire, if he doesn't spot me, that tells me something about how his tank is either crewed or equipped. Like either he doesn't have 100% commander, or he doesn't have coated optics. Really, every medium tank should have coated optics from like tier 6 and up, in my opinion. And so because the Panther is not spotting me, I know I can safely whittle him down without risking too much. There is a kind of big flaw in our deployment. Usually you would have one sniper, like our SU-130PM, usually, and where he is fine given where their T-52 is coming. But the problem is we've got too many tanks bounced up on hill. We don't have any snipers down on the J or K lane. So this Progetto, I'm clicking on the map because I'm watching all this on the map. Those tanks that are punishing our tanks are trying to flank our tanks, they're not getting any meaningful pressure. I mean, matter of fact, it's not going to be until the SU-130 is flexing down there that we finally have someone apply that pinch from the southwest. So a bit of a deployment mistake on our team. At least we committed strong to hill, which is a good thing, right? It's just people weren't being careful enough. And then now you can see like our SU-130PM just smashed their AMD 178B, and then their Progetto really doesn't have anywhere to go, and he's not a strong DPM tank. Once he's blown his clip, his reload drops precipitously, and so I'm actually being very careful. I have crashed my French wheeled vehicles. There's another huge shot there that was from that SU-130PM. So he did a good job once he read the map, pushing northeast to be able to get that flanking fire. And even though he's really squishy, that was a relatively safe place for him to do so. Okay, so we are gradually losing this battle. We do have a strong presence on hill. We are losing on the western side. Like you can see there, EBR Hotchkiss is going after our Artie. And some players will do that, they'll YOLO do that. I think it depends. In the previous battle, you may have noticed that our Lynx actually did that. About midway through the battle, he went and pushed deep, and he took out both of their Arties. Now, I generally think that will only happen if their team is stupid. Like in the previous Westfield battle, they had both a Charioteer and an Udez that should have been providing cover fire to the two Arties, right? And I don't like to take those types of risks, assuming that two TDs are going to repetitively miss me while I probably need 4 shots to kill the two Arties, or at least, let's say, 3. Okay, so we've won hill, but the problem is T-29... Well, I should say we were more or less won most of hill, but there's a full hit point T-29. This is the perfect time for me to go after Artie. Obviously, we're down by 5 tanks. This is likely not going to be a win, but what I can do is go after their Arties. And that HE is just beautiful in terms of the amount of damage, and it probably does things like, it might be damaging modules and such. I've got to clean up these 3 Arties as fast as possible. There's part of the problem. Like, you've seen people joke about like the Austin Powers, like when he's in that cart and he's in a hallway stuck driving back and forth. That can literally happen in these French wheel vehicles because they don't have really good turning radius. Driving a car, you may have to pull an endpoint turn if you hit something or get stuck in between something. It's a real pain. Now, their team, obviously, if they wanted, could cap us out. There's really, our T-32 and Progetto could probably reset for a while. Their team is doing the right thing, in my opinion, which is they're going to go try and push and burn down, our remaining tanks. And this Artie, obviously he was laying in ambush for me. I kill him, and then, our guys take down their EBR Hotchkiss, who was trying to engage too much in a frontal brawl. If I were in his shoes, I would have circled around the hill and come up behind them over by D0, right? And then obviously they're already just fired, so not sure where their Artie is, but so, this tank does have a really good ability to circle slower tanks, especially tanks that lack either hull and or turret traverse. So let's take this Tiger P. This is a perfect example where I will absolutely run at an isolated tank and just drive circles around him until he's dead, right? And you can see his hull and his turret traverse cannot keep up with me, and he made a mistake. People have complained about the Wheelfield, so by the way, I almost had a heart attack here. I was like, oh, that's it, I'm done. And then I managed to grab some traction. The only thing that sucks about all that is because I was flipped over as basically stationary, and he was able to get a shot into me. But if you're being circled by one of these, French wheel vehicles, and you're in a big slow heavy, put your butt up against something. Rock, a building, any kind of hard cover, a hill, and they can't go around you, right? And so this guy, I'm watching his turret and basically timing his turret and spinning around. Once I did cross around a circle and give him a potential shot, but otherwise I've been more careful. The main thing I need to be wary of is that they're already going to be trying to time my circling, and so I've been trying to hitch my movement a little bit too, to make it such that it's not overly predictable. Let me say, by the way, this game, like, I've never had a game that came close to this in terms of damage, so just keep that in mind, and a lot of things have worked out. I mean, I'd say I played it correctly. Like when I went to the hill, that was correct. When I was shooting their Panther M10, that was correct. When I then went into the ditch to help finish off their Progetto, that was correct. You could say I maybe should have driven down to try to get the Progetto more aggressively, but like I said, I crashed just like I flipped earlier. I've had a lot of bad experiences. The problem is by the way, I don't know where the arty is, and so while I would go like help RT32 is already at a sliver of health, realistically, I just need to get rid of the arty and then go from there. So the EBR Hotchkiss, I'll show you. There was some interesting commentary, by players about the French wheel vehicles. People were saying that these vehicles are too strong, they're overpowered. I think their guns are really nice, and they have the best mobility in the game. They can be difficult to drive in close quarters, and their view range is terrible. Now, was a little bit of a surprise to me is that some of the tanks so far, players are getting a better win rate on the Tier 6 and Tier 7 French wheeled light tanks, so the AMD 178B and the EBR Hotchkiss, relative to their average win rate on their account. But keep in mind a couple things. One, these tanks just came out, right? And so generally speaking, it's the veteran Watt players that, for example, would have played the ELC AMX, saved up the the tank XP needed to immediately unlock the AMD 178B. That's what I did, for example, so I didn't have to burn any free experience. So a lot of times when you get new tanks introduced at like tier 6 to 10 of a tech tree, it's not brand spanking new players who are picking up those tanks. It's players who are already playing the game, tend to have better crews, better game knowledge, etc. So I'll show you the tank curve for this particular tank in a little bit. I do think, obviously these tanks, the speed is best used when it's used correctly. What I do have a suspicion is that some players who are really bad in light tanks, the tracked ones, and just tend to YOLO, will be able to do that better in this particular tank because your survivability and your gun handling, or I should say your mobility and your gun handling are meaningfully better, right? Light tanks in general are really, people play them to YOLO. It's just not the right thing to do, in my opinion, in most cases. Like, selectively go after people, just like I went after that, right at that Tiger P and circled him. And by the way, here I make a big mistake. Obviously, I'm too shotable. I was hoping to get a shot before he dipped back behind the rock. In hindsight, if I had to do this again, this big rock in between us was really kind of throwing off my judgment here. What I should have done is just kept driving circles around the big rock and shoot him whenever I could. Now, unfortunately, I've made a mistake, and so it's great that shot went into him, but I should keep driving. I was hoping to maybe get around behind him, and I stalled for a second. That's a mistake, but who knows? The main thing to keep in mind is there's no reason I should be facing a full hit point T32 at the end of the game. Now, obviously, our team really screwed up, and if you look at we had 11 people under 500 damage, and a team like that really is it's extremely difficult to carry. It's even close. It's even amazing we brought it back to a 1 tank deficit as it is. So this tank, I managed to pull like a 60% win rate playing it solo and over 2 kills per game, which is kind of that mad. It's rare to get tanks that you can do this in. Now on Watt News, you can check out the tank curves, and you can see the blue line represents on a tank the expected curve if a tank had average performance, right? That a player's win rate on that tank should match their account win rate. And then you can see this black line. This is the early data that we have for the EBR Hotchkiss. And then as you kind of go up into the mid 50s, you can see that the players with higher win rates are getting like 2 to almost 3% higher win rate on the EBR Hotchkiss. But I've been checking the WN expected values for a number of French tanks, and they are gradually dropping. Remember, this is really early on, and they might need to be tuned a bit, but overall I think just give it some time. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Take care.